And now for our dear Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, the Honorable Madam Gail Teixeira.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues in Cabinet and my colleague, particularly Minister Ashley, for this wonderful budget. Before I start, I must recognize and acknowledge and congratulate Dr. 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄 for the comments she made today, particularly her last comment. There was a time in this country when the PPP offered critical support to the PNC, highly controversial, where we said we would support the good things and we would criticize the bad things. Of course, we were told by Mr. Burnham that they were the Bolsheviks, meaning the majority, and we were the Mensheviks, meaning the minority. So yes, Dr. 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄, it is a time for a form of critical support. Again, it will help to move this country even faster forward. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is an example and a product of inclusion and participation. And why do I say that? I've heard people talking about inclusion, participation, on the other side. But the private sector, and a critical component of any economy moving forward, any country moving forward, have all come forward in public statements supporting this budget. And further, saying they contributed to it. They made proposals and recommendations which are included in the budget. So we hear, we listen. The community meetings, there's not one day in this country that there are ministers not out in the field. Thousands and thousands of community meetings have been held, meeting people on the road in terms of looking at what has to be done, development of communities. And we listen. People say they got a problem with the road, they got a problem with drainage, they got a problem with the health center, they got a problem with this. And we listen, and we incorporate their views and suggestions into the budget. The point is that we are there physically, we're accessible, we're visible, and we are listening, and not just listening, responding to that. And this is what you call a responsive government, a critical component of democracy as well. And Mr. Speaker, you know, we have much to talk about. There is so much and not enough time, as you know, Mr. Speaker. 35 minutes is not a long time. But everywhere we go, I am probably one of the oldest members of the Parliament. I hate to say it as a woman, but what can you do? But everywhere we go in Guyana, there is progress. I go down roads sometimes, I know landmarks, I don't know always the street names in some areas, and suddenly I don't recognize where I am. Can you imagine we're having 11-story buildings? We were told for decades, you can't build more than 3 stories in Guyana, you can sink. There is progress, and obviously when you have progress, you have to deal with some inconveniences. When the roads are being built, dust and traffic congestion and so on. Unless there's some discomfort along the way. Everywhere you go, there is progress. Schools, health centers, roads, buildings, houses going up, what you call Airbnbs going up. It is unbelievable. And I want to say something which for the younger generation you might not appreciate. What I remember by 1992, but our beautiful Guyana was looking dismal, broke up. Everywhere you went to communities, houses weren't painted, they were falling down. There were people living, 20 people in a house, cousin, auntie, granny, in-laws, with 1 yard tap and 1 latrine, 1 toilet, outside toilet. And so, when you look at now the housing programs and the conditions under which people are living and the dignity, one of the most important things for human beings is to have dignity. And when a woman or a man or a couple gets a house lot, it gives them collateral, it gives them security of tenure, it allows them to own something in their own right. It is liberating. And you can't put a price on that, Mr. Speaker. You can't put a price on that. Not only are you living in better conditions than you were before. Mr. Speaker, one of the things, how have people reacted to this budget? How have people reacted? And I wanted to tell a little amusing story. You know, we all have WhatsApp and we receive messages from all parts of the country. And one far interior area, I got a message the other night saying they'd had a discussion on the budget and they were all excited about it and looking forward to it. And they said they're going to vote for the PPC, of course. But one of the jokes of the whole thing is that they were delighted about the $100,000 for each newborn baby produced by a Guyanese woman and man. And that very night they were going to start working on that project. So $100,000 for every newborn baby, $1.3 billion it'll cost. The fact that people are also looking forward to the $10,000 per child in terms of income tax, that they're non-taxable. So those that have 5 children will have $50,000 a month, times 12 months, you calculate it, of being able to deduct from your income tax. These are things that people are welcoming. The $100,000 moved to $130,000 for the threshold, costing about $8.5 billion in the budget, adds another 22,000 people to not be part of the tax net. That's in addition to the ones last year that came off the tax net. The changes in income tax from 28 to 25 and so on are important. And I leave that to the specialists to deal with those issues. But all these measures is to make life easier for our people. Make life easier, less stressful for our people. And so, Mr. Speaker, due to my time, I will try to keep moving as quickly as possible because I want to get all my bits and pieces in. Mr. Speaker, I have heard some very sanctimonious arguments in this House that, you know, some people are holier than thou who suddenly can hold up integrity to the world, that they're so virtuous. Well, maybe sometimes we have to remind people who maybe have amnesia or they suffer from some kind of dementia in terms of losing their brain cells. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we have to remind people about, my colleague spoke about elections. And if Mr. Jones, who asked for evidence, I produced for him the report of the Commission inquiry into the general and regional elections on March the 2nd, 2020. 2020, this is the most recent one. The most recent one, where they said this was one of the most brazen efforts to steal an election. It's 2020, so I don't have to go back to 1968, 1973, 1978, 1980, 1985. I just got to go 4 years ago. So, Mr. Speaker, they want evidence? Here the evidence. Mr. Speaker, let's remind the 𝐴𝐴PNU-AFC, because I want to separate the opposition from Ms. Dr. Kissoon, who is not part of 𝐴𝐴PNU-AFC. And they're rude and disrespectful to walk out on the Deputy Speaker of this House. No respect for women. Y'all come to this House over and over and talk about women, but you disrespect a woman being a Deputy Speaker in this House. Disrespect. For what? Mr. Speaker, the opposition continues to suffer from myopia, short-sightedness. I keep telling Frank, Dr. Anthony, do something. Help them get their sight back. But it seems they can't work on it. It is congenital. It is congenital. But let me remind my friends on the other side of the House in 𝐴𝐴PNU-AFC. Amila Falls. Some of you talked about electricity and cost of living. Let me go back to Amila Falls, 2013, where in Parliament, despite meetings with the former Leader of Opposition, Mr. Granger, and his team, at Office of the President, with President Ramata, including inter-party discussions between the PPC and the 𝐴𝐴PNU-AFC, including agreements that they were going to, in the second round, support the laws that would allow for Amila Falls to go through with the funding. They defeated it twice. Twice. And Mr. Speaker, if that project had gone through, that's 11 years ago, you know, we would have had more electricity, less blackouts, and it would have been reduced. The cost would reduce. Mr. Speaker, if we go back to 2013, Reuters, they said, and we lost the funding, the company pulled out because, and I'll just quote one part of it, of the article of August 12, 2013, Reuters, a planned 100 million, you couldn't have known that 11 years ago. You got Farsi? Use Farsi? I know you got short-sightedness. A planned 100 million IADB financing deal required unanimous parliamentary backing for legislating, creating the environment protection for the area around the site for Amila Falls, and raising government loan guarantees to state-owned companies. And you defeated it twice. It went round, you defeated it. Second time you defeated. Again, short-sightedness. Mr. Speaker, short-sightedness. We had the issue of the anti-money laundering and countering the financing terrorism bill. Defeated once, defeated twice in the Parliament when we were in minority between 2012 and 2015. What did that lead to, Mr. Speaker? We were grey-listed by 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄. We were grey-listed for FATF for 2 years. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when they got into government in 2015, they bring the same bill they've been opposing in the Parliamentary Select Committee, and which they defeated twice in the House, bring the same bill back here and pass it. Mr. Speaker, vindictiveness and small-mindedness doesn't move a country forward, doesn't help develop a country. You, in your own, have held back, you and the 𝐷𝐹 held back the forward movement of this country. You have taken anti-national positions against the people of this country. And you know, as one of my colleagues said in the debate, that how is it that every time the PEPC is in government, this country moves forward, even in the most difficult times? I don't know if our juk is good, maybe our aura is good, or we got good juju, but somehow when APNU gets in there, the country starts removing. Mr. Speaker, they talk of inclusion and participation and transparency, yet they signed the agreement with Exxon on October the 16th, 2016. Secret. When the media asked, when the opposition, which was us, asked about, we had heard there was an agreement, denied, up to the budget debate of 2017, they denied there was such an agreement until it was exposed in the media. Then they had to admit that yes, there was an agreement with Exxon in 2016. One that has been criticized in the press all along, but you cannot at this time reverse it. This is hypocrisy at the highest level, Mr. Speaker. And you come here to this House in this debate, and you cry crocodile tears. I shouldn't say crocodile, it's caiman. You cry caiman tears in this country. My colleagues have referred to many of the scandals with procurement. Durban Park, Sussex Street Bond, COVID-19, the way in which the drugs and medical supplies, while the Minister of Health was ensconced at Ashmin and right in this building dealing with elections. Mr. Speaker, we know what her priority was. Mr. Speaker, they say they didn't have oil money when they were in government, so they couldn't do the things that we're doing. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me remind my honorable friends on the other side. There was money left, a lot of money left. This was in 92, when we were the third poorest nation in the entire hemisphere, Western Hemisphere. We were with Haiti and Bolivia, poorest. We were the most indebted. We started to breathe and unravel what they'd done from 1964 to 1992. It took us years. We had to go through hurdles with the IMF and the World Bank and everybody to make us credible again, to make us be able to have money. Mr. Speaker, just say, before I get into what I want to say, I remember when we sat down one day and talked about a national housing program, and we would start with estate land, plantation land from 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄 not being used. We sat there and we started to look at which area could we try with. We realized we had no money to do the infrastructure. We had no money to be able to, how do we help people? We went to the World Bank and IDB, and they told us, yes, we can lend you money for housing program, but you have to ask the people buying it, to pay the market value of the land. Mr. Speaker, in 92, 61% of our people were living below the poverty line. 61%. 61%. We had malnutrition in this country. I know about it. Right in Georgetown, Mr. Speaker, right in Georgetown, I saw for myself children with kwashiorkor, red hair, not like mine, and big bellies, not like mine. Children in Lodge, in Albois Town, with malnutrition in this country, and severe malnutrition, living in an abject poverty. And you come here and play sanctimonious with us? You think we have no memory? You think the Guyanese people have no memory? Mr. Speaker, let's talk about, did they have money or not? Were they starved for funds or not? Well, let's do some reminding. Mr. Speaker, you know, gold, we're a gold-producing country. And, in fact, there are documents to show the Bank of Guyana assets of the amount of gold that we left in the gold reserves. Gold reserves are like your savings in case of a bad day, a rainy day, you got a flood and you can't, and the country's in crisis. You kind of dip into your gold reserves, but your gold reserves are what you really protect. And you never sell your gold on the world market at low prices unless you're in a really bad situation. Mr. Speaker, there was $15 billion left in the gold reserves of Guyana in 2015. Mr. Speaker, it went down. It went down, according to the Bank of Guyana, in 2019, December, to 635 million, according to US dollars. 635 Guyana dollars, sorry. 600, from 14.2 billion, so I said 15. In 2015, that's what they did. Where the money gone? Where did the money go? Mr. Speaker, never accounted for. Mr. Speaker, and I'm not exaggerating. If my colleagues on the other side want to do their own checking, could you go to the Bank of Guyana Statement on Assets and Liabilities, published in the Official Gazette on May the 30th, 2015. Mr. Speaker, the same source will show you in February 29, 2020, 3 days before the elections, that the gold reserve held less than $1 billion. That is 635 million. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, more than that, and what is wicked, what is seriously wicked, is that wicked, yes. In fact, they did not tell the people that, in fact, they had undervalued these accounts to let people think there was more money there than there was in the Bank of Guyana assets. They sold our patrimony. The gold reserves of our country is our patrimony. Guyanese, every single Guyanese patrimony. It is there to help us as a people. So they said they didn't have money. So where did the $15 billion go? Mr. Speaker, we also have Between 2015 and 2019, the budget, when added up, was $1.2 trillion. So they're all excited about the $1 trillion we have now. But they had, in the 2015 to 2019, 1.25 billion. What did they do with it? Where is it? What is there to show for it? At least Burnham could say he built Suicide Highway and he built the Demerara floating bridge. They can't say one project. Not one project is a legacy for them in government. Not one. Not one.
Tell them.
Mr. Speaker.
They did nothing.
Mr. Speaker.
They did nothing.
They
did nothing.
Mr. Speaker.
You
They.
did nothing.
Mr. Speaker, you have the foreign reserves, the foreign currency reserves. Foreign currency reserves in 2015 was over $700 million US dollars. In 2020, it was about $200 million US dollars. Where the money gone? What did you do with almost $500 million US dollars? Not in the budget, but reflected.
They did nothing.
So don't tell us that you didn't have money. When we came into government in 92, we were so in debt. As a Minister of Health, my budget was about $200-300 million. Ask Dr. Frank Munn, he's now in the billions, 30 billion, billions. Mr. Speaker, that was hard guava season in 92 to 97. Very hard guava season to run a government that had a collapsed health sector, a collapsed education sector, a collapsed infrastructure. No money had been spent on drainage and irrigation for 10 years.
Collapsed everything.
Mr. Speaker.
Everything was in collapse.
Mr. Speaker. And you know, they hold up their tenure in government. But you know, if when I was Minister of Home Affairs, had 2 riots in Camp Street that led to the havoc that took place, I would have been booted out by Alial. But Mr. Speaker, what is the legacy of APNU FC? Your legacy is 2 riots in Camp Street that led to pandemonium, to people dying and being moved to Lusignan under the most inhumane conditions, and embarrassing us as a people that the United Nations Working Group on People of African Descent came and went to Lusignan in 2017 and 2018, and they condemned Lusignan as inhabitable, inhuman. That's your legacy. That is your legacy. And it is we who've come in, and Robeson gave a report on what we've been doing with Lusignan in the prisons of this country. You tell me about integrity. Oh, please. Don't think this is the modern world. This is a modern where you can Google anything you want. Mr. Speaker, you tell me about integrity. But from the time the Integrity Commission Act came in, and you had to make your declarations, the opposition, whether you or your previous oppositions, have not been declaring to the Integrity Commission for decades. Why? Why?
That's correct. Let him explain.
Why? So take shame off your face now and come clean. Take shame off your face and come clean. Mr. Speaker, we came in 2017 to this House, October the 5th, 2017. A motion signed by the now President, who was a young Member of Parliament, and myself. The motion proposes to stimulate the economy and reduce poverty and hardships in the 2018 budget. This is just before. This motion, we tried to have debated. It was debated. Of course, it was defeated, because every motion we brought to this House was defeated. And Mr. Speaker, I asked the opposition, because there's a long motion which exposed the level of decline of this economy in a few years. In a few years. Mr. Speaker, you know, we're not an old democracy. We're a young democracy. We have gone through hell and high water to reach where we're at today. Democracy is fragile at its best, even in advanced democratic nations. We are a young democratic nation. And so it's fragile. And when the economy is treated in a certain way, as they did, then how is there to be progress? Let us go, Mr. Speaker. So I advise you, go back to the 2017 motion, moved by a young MP called Mr. Irfan Ali and signed by an older MP called Gail Teixeira on October 10, 2017.
That's much older.
And by the way, if you read this, you will see that we kept our promises. We made recommendations. And those are in the budgets from 2020 to now as we evolve and rectify, fix what you unfixed and damaged. Mr. Speaker, the opposition, I was quite delighted to see that PNCR putting out people first and at the center of our development agenda 2020, and this is your manifesto for 2025. Now, Mr. Speaker, you know, it's very interesting what they came up with in 2015 to 2020 as their strategy. What this is. Basically, Mr. Speaker, there's been no movement at all. No movement. They throw out, we're going to give this, we're going to give that, we're going to give this, and one of them, it says, we're going to give Guyanese people, every household, $2 million. I think that's what they said. Mr. Speaker, I was at the National Park for May Day in 2016. I was the opposition rep speaking at the National Park with the trade unions there, Patrick Yard and all of them. And Amna Ali, as a minister, a high-ranking minister of the government, a high-ranking executive of the APNU FC, promised the people, all the crowd there, every household will get $1 million out of their old money. Where the $1 million gone? Never produced. And now they come back. Now they come back and talk about $2 million. But Mr. Speaker, what is most disturbing is that they haven't learned. They haven't learned. They're not dealing with it. You have to, in order to spend money, you got to make money.
That's right. That's right.
In order to have money, you have to spend money, you have to invest money. Money has to circulate. Giving subsidies without agriculture, housing, infrastructure, you are building on quicksand. And this goes back to exactly the same formula of 2015-29. You're going to give you and give you and give you. Read, is there an economic thing in here? No. It just openly says, yeah, we're going to develop, different places and stuff like that. But nothing for the farmers. You say you're for the working people. Nothing for the farmers. Nothing. They're talking about economy now, and agriculture, and information-based technology, and tourism. I'm not talking about just handing out things. The last time you were in government, your formula for development was tax, and more tax. And you depended on tax to bring in revenue so that you could so-called develop the country. Well, you taxed, and as I refer to the motion there, 2017, it shows the amount of tax you were making. However, where did it go? Again, I ask, where did it go? It cannot be explained. Not one legacy project, not one. You're telling me the Independence arches, which were donated by the private sector, is your legacy? That they're all over the place? Mr. Speaker, the manifesto, this is the 2025 manifesto, is devoid of any economic strategy.
Totally devoid.
Totally devoid. And Mr. Speaker, this is, when you read it, you feel sad. I feel sad. Because I can say as a politician, they got nothing to offer. And they don't, really. But I also feel sad as a Guyanese, that a party that says they got 217,000 votes in 2020 have come with such a hackneyed, myopic approach to the economic and social development of our country. It's sad. It's really sad. I would like to have seen my friends on the other side raised to the occasion. This country is moving forward like never before. Never before. And if they don't see it, it's a problem. Because the rest of the Guyanese people see it every single day. They see opportunities. You had the money from Norway, the agreement with Norway to do with carbon credits, $200 odd million US over 5 years. to build a mila, you threw it away. You never used it for the indigenous communities. Where it gone? And you rejected. You said you wanted consultants. You always like consultants. And the consultant said to you that a mila was the most ready and viable project to move forward. And you dismissed it. Mr. Speaker, you know, development is an interesting thing. And maybe we should, as a people, have more discussions on development. But Mr. Speaker, when we build the Harbor Bridge, the Demar Harbor Bridge, that new, spanking new bridge that's going up, we can all see it. Not like how it was being done under my former colleague over the other side, which has led to procurement, a commission of inquiry, etc., court cases, etc. But when that bridge goes up, you see, we look at a bridge and think, oh, it's our infrastructure. How the people can benefit? The people not going to benefit. They can't eat concrete. That's what you say. That's what you say on your websites and stuff. Mr. Speaker, when that bridge opens, it will do many things. Many, many things for the people of this country. All the massive projects. While they're being dealt with, jobs. It creates manufacturing, transportation. It creates a whole activity around it. Secondly, of materials and men and machines, that is phenomenal. This is a legacy project. But including that, for the people, what does it mean? If you live on West Coast and you want to come to Georgetown every morning to reach work at 8 o'clock or to reach school at 8:30, you gotta leave home 5 and 6 o'clock. So it means people will benefit from time. They have less time, less stress. It'll lead to greater economic activity between not only Georgetown and Region 4 with Region 3, but also Bartica, Essequibo, because that is the route how you get there. Transportation links are critical for development. Moving goods and services quickly, moving people quickly. That is what is important. We talked about the Bartica connection with what was called El Condor in the old days, between what is Purica and going towards Bartica. When that road opens up, the interior will be a different place, and moving goods and services between the interior and the capital. This is the future of our country. Why are you so blind? Why can't you understand? Why must you be so tainted that everything you dissect? It's okay to criticize and say, do it better. But it is such, you give off such negative vibes. There is nothing good happening in this country, according to you. Nothing good. Mr. Speaker, if we take that project as an example of development and all the things, the World Bank says very clearly in 2024, its report of development report, it says very clearly that a country to adopt what is the fastest way to develop a country is to adopt new technologies and digital instruction industries, ensuring continuous economic expansion with rapid infrastructure and to drive rapid growth. Mr. Speaker, if we go along canter, little bit by little bit, like how you all think you've been doing it, we would never reach where we need to reach. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure, as I said, is a major catalyst to develop in our country. It also encourages investment. It encourages young people. They're in school and they're going to do CXC. What do I want to be? Well, if you don't have no big thing going on, they'll never be charmed by it. They'll never be excited about it. Now people in 5th and 6th form can say, what do I want to be? I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a scientist. What do I want to be? And we are providing the means through these programs in the budget, education, health, to help our, and goal and all these things, to help our young people reach their dreams. And there's no rapid bullet for dreams. You can't go through it. But there is hope. One of the fundamental issues of oil producing countries, one of the fundamental issues they have to encounter is economic diversification. All those countries that have had first oil in the developing world, many of them have fallen into the trap that you suddenly become dependent on oil. Mr. Speaker, we were heading in that direction in 2018 and 29. It was all about oil. Agriculture was left, flounder as it may. Rice, sugar, mining, everything was in decline. And the stats are there to show it. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, what is in decline is your time. You will need an extension to complete. You have 5 minutes, Honorable Minister.
Okay.
If you look at the GTE project, they killed a miler. We are starting back a miler, but GTE, the largest project in this country, the largest and most expensive. And we've said in our budget that when this project is commissioned, 50% of the consumer costs will be reduced. Do you have an idea what the impact that is on every family of Guyana? Of every family on a monthly basis? Of their purchasing power being increased. Mr. Speaker, one of the things with economic development and also targeted infrastructure, we have been very clear and strategic in what infrastructure we're doing. Because targeted infrastructure not only increases economic activity, but enhances economic growth, it reduces inequalities, and it improves public service delivery. And we can give example, roads, electricity, water, for example, and the diversification of our economy. So we're no longer oil country dependent on oil, because oil in there all the time, you know. Oil, it comes to an end, it isn't there forever. It may last till X period of time. Look at Trinidad. It was on a good wicket from 1960s. Oil gone, oil dry up. They're one of still the producers of the natural gas. So, Mr. Speaker, our friends need to go in a room somewhere and try to figure out really what they stand for. Are they for Guyana? Are they going to support a local carbon development strategy that is a comprehensive national strategy in terms of our environment, our climate, indigenous rights, women's rights, etc.? Mr. Speaker, one thing, when we look at social capital, how can we tell a country is moving forward? Cell phones. You know, cell phones is mostly in Georgetown. Go into any interior village and community and see how many cell phones are there. And what is the connectivity that we're doing with Starlink and ICT hubs and so on. So that the people, the country is connected. We've been connected for the first time. So people in the interior, we are removing the digital divide and inequalities. So cell phones is a good indicator of what's called social capital and improvement in people's quality of life. TVs, televisions. 1992, hardly anybody had a television. Televisions. Cars. In the 1980s, cars were tied up with rubber band and all sorts of things. You couldn't get no foreign currency to bring in parts for cars. But now, cars, ATVs, motorbikes, electric bikes, electric cars. These are indicators that there is progress, that people's purchasing power has increased. Not a small group. When drivers come to work, it's an indicator that things change. That is an indicator. And I could point to many ministries where the drivers of ministers, the drivers working in the ministries, come to work in the ministry in a car they own. That is the filter down effect. That is the filter down effect on ordinary people who don't make what you say are big salaries. Mr. Speaker, APNU AFC needs to wake up and smell the roses. Whether you're there or whether you support or not, this country is moving. Nobody's going to stop it now. She's got our beautiful Guyana, our blessed nation, has got a taste of progress and movement forward. People have a taste for the future, hope, optimism, and they ain't going to want it reverse at all. So you better wake up and smell the roses. Because if you're on the wrong side of history, you'll be on the wrong side of our nation once again. Mr. Speaker, our country is on the move, and let me just say one thing. If there's one group of people on the move, it's the women of Guyana. 40-odd% have house lots. 40-odd% have ownership in shade houses. Women are becoming contractors in the construction industry. 365 got contracts out of 1,000 contracts or more. We are not taken left, comrade. We're not taking left, and we don't care who says what. We have houses, we are putting our children in school, and as one woman told me, I got my house, and if any man be bad, I could put you out. I don't have to depend on no man anymore. So it is a liberation of our women, empowerment of our women. The empowerment of our Armenian villages has never taken place like this. $4 billion of carbon markets went into indigenous communities. 30,000 solar panels went to 30,000 families in the interior of Guyana, landings, mining landings, and so on, to give people light. And you think, so what? But if you don't have light, how do children study? How do teachers study? How do people learn what is going on? Light is illuminating. And for the interior areas, it allows children to have a future. As I said, 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄 has to decide, which side are you on? Progress, development? Or are you going to continue? And we all know the answer to that. Unless you have a revolution or coup inside your group, which I know will not happen, that or do you want to continually be in this position of holding back progress of our country, of being the spoiler? You're a bunch of spoilers. Because when 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄 took up critical support, we supported the foreign policy, we supported things, and we criticized you for rigging elections. You are incapable of bringing up a critical support. That's what we did. Holding back progress, holding back, and trying to holding back people's progress. You know, the Guyanese people have seen it, smelt it, seen change, and they want more, and they will get more out of the People's Progressive Party Civic. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for thank you very much, and for our people, and all our people. As an older member of my government and party, and an older member of a member parliament, I am so proud of where Guyana is going. I knew the hard days. I am so proud and so honored to be able to stand in this house and talk about how we are moving forward. And we are not going to allow any reversal. No more 2020 experience. That is not going to happen in Guyana. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Minister Teixeira.